was setting up in the social hall, because then we could potentially pull people in from the social hall, but this is a more comfortable space.
Yeah, this is a great space.
And for those of you who weren't here last week, this is Janet Neice, and
Hello.
we got her name from our wonderful Stephanie Sinks, who is a geriatric care manager, and I'm afraid she's on my speed dial. Janet and Stephanie have worked together for years, maybe?
Yeah. Wow. Is it really?
So this is the third topic in our health and wellness series. The first, Melissa Ann did on spirituality. Second, Heidi Butts did on mental health. And movement is such a big part of being healthy that this is the second session that Janice is doing. Her company is Bold Fit.
Bold Fit. Yep.
And could I just read from your
Yes,
mission
please.
statement?
Absolutely.
Okay. Bold Fit embarks on a mission to define and improve the connection between mind and body through a dynamic approach to fitness. We want to bring people of all fitness levels to a space that facilitates a better understanding of health. With that, Jen.
Thank you, Barb. And again, thank you all for coming in today. As Barb mentioned, my name is Janet Neice, and I own, with my husband, a personal training service business called Bold Fit. We're located in the south part of Ann Arbor, down South State Street. And I thank you for inviting me to be part of this series this month on faith and wellness. And yes, I started last week. I'm going to actually give you a quick recap of what we went over last week. So while this is more focused a little bit on more the physical side of health, it does have a link to speaking about emotional, mental health, and other facets, because all of those things are actually inextricably linked. So we'll touch upon those subjects as well. So last week I wanted to present to people just the basic concepts of why it's important for us to be moving, keep moving, and try to avoid long periods of immobility. And the model that we use with our clients at our business is called the functional movement training model. And basically, that model is around 5 different primary human movements that we do in our daily activities of living. And we work with people to learn, essentially, how to do things that may have seemed, like very intuitive, like how to sit into a chair, how to stand up again. That's a squatting position. So we are teaching people how to do those movements correctly, how to have proper form so that you can protect your bodies. Really, this is all about making sure we take care of our bodies and keeping them nice and safe. So mobility in and of itself, just quickly, is the ability to move freely and easily through a given range of motion. So any movement that we're doing on a daily basis, we want to be able to have as much range of motion as possible, like a full extension of the leg when you're walking. Or you could raise your arm all the way out to the side if you're doing some sort of shoulder raise. Any restrictions to muscles, joints, anything like that will prevent a full range of motion. And again, we're trying in life to be as movable, accessible to things as possible. So, going back into the training model again, it's a systematic approach that we use to teach people, again, your body awareness, right? Just very basic things. How you're supported, how we stand, how we should remain upright. This is what the model that we train with is focused on. So it's not necessarily like you're going to come into an example training session where we're only going to focus on getting big muscles. That's not the point of the training. The training is to help people to get stronger so that they can live their lives, their quality of life better, and be independent as you can for longevity. We went over quickly what is considered to be proper form and alignment, right? Whether we're standing, whether we're sitting, there's a connection here in our body, right? We have the head that's on the neck, And the neck is related, then ears to your shoulders. Remember that song, ears, I can't remember it now. Head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Yes, very indicative of what actually our alignment is. But so often we take such things for granted, right? So in this case, we were showing, here's a great example of two people that are able to stay nice and upright. You know, we're bilateral creatures, so this is how we move. We don't have 4 legs. So that spine of ours is really important to take care of and keep healthy. So this is just how all of those things relate into a proper alignment of your body. And then from there, we just broke down into some main areas where to really think about keeping that form and alignment intact. So starting with the head and neck, we want to have the head sit nicely on top of the neck without creating any additional deviation where you start to jut your head out from your neck. Because every time you're doing so, you're creating this disalignment with your spinal, with the cervical spine that's right connected up here. And people learned last week that for every inch that you move your head out of your neck alignment, it's creating 10 additional pounds of pressure. So it's possible that you could be, if you're 6 inches out, 60 pounds of additional pressure. Now, you may not feel that consciously, but your bones and your joints and all of that over time will have to adapt to that. And that's why you can see in that top photo that that person is now starting to curve forward. So those are the things that kind of happen once we start to get out of proper alignment. It's just your body adapting to that new way, even if it's not the correct way to be. We moved on there to our shoulders and the neutrality of keeping our shoulders down and away from our ears, especially since this is an area that gets really tight, lots of stress that we hold in this area. So oftentimes we don't even realize when our shoulders start to come creeping up this way, and then we have to just kind of keep reminding ourselves that we want them down, but also without, the lifestyles of today, we happen to be leaning a lot more forward, computer screens, right, cell phones. So this alignment has become more and more common amongst young people. And so we're already trying to teach younger people that, we need to really correct those behaviors before it gets too bad. And so, part of this is just behavioral change, just being more conscious of how you carry yourself. From there, we also talked about our core, why it's so important to maintain good core strength. And now this is the center of our bodies. And we are transferring power from upper to lower through our core, and it's a 360 system of muscles. Sometimes when that name core is said, people have a tendency to think just about their front abdominals. Because we're forward-facing creatures, we see what's in front, but we don't really think about what's in the back part of our body because it's just not visible to us on a daily basis. But it is important to think our bodies have muscles all the way around, so it's not just for forward position movement. And then finally, the importance of having really strong glutes and hips, because your hips govern your movements. And as we know, the hips get a lot of wear and tear throughout life, and if we're not careful on making sure we have a decent balance between our hips, that can create, again, imbalances, asymmetries, in which your body will adapt. But then that's going to knock other things out of alignment, right? It's like a domino effect. If your hip is off, that's going to go down to your knee, down to your ankle, down to your feet. And sometimes you can't even tell where that problem might have originated from because of that chain effect down your whole system of joints connected there. The glutes being a particularly important one because of sedentary lifestyles, we sit a lot. So we tend to now think of our glutes as our seat cushions. And people have really lost a connection that there's a muscle back there. As we discovered, Jane noted accurately that the glutes are our biggest, strongest muscles in our body. Yes.
Speaking of glutes,
Yes, please.
the camera,
Yes.
you can't see.
See. My glutes. Let me just move.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just need, and
I'll come out and demo.
People here too. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, this is the dance floor.
Okay. You're welcome. Yeah, so back here with our glutes, right, that's where we want to make sure we maintain some sort of physical contact engagement in them. And this is something we can even practice standing in line at the grocery store, feeling the engagement of your glutes and releasing. Same thing with your shoulders. We learned last week a technique to bring your shoulders back. Feel your shoulder blades at the back of your spine and squeeze them together, creating a little bit of tension there, holding that tension for just a few seconds and releasing. And right there, you have an upper back strengthening movement. And the same thing with your glutes. When you're engaging them, you're flexing those muscles. And as soon as you flex those muscles, you feel a discernible difference of how your spine relates to your body, because it automatically kind of encases it and protects it and being nice and stable, especially in the lumbar part of your spine, where we tend to have a lot of different pain or injuries or things that might affect us on a daily basis. Typically, something will happen around the lower back. So all of that, keeping the alignment, engaging the right muscles in these sections, areas, are just an important part of being healthy, just staying healthy. And I'll go in a little bit. We talked into what are those 5 primary movements that we do as human beings. So again, we mentioned sitting and standing. So on the top corner there, that woman is practicing her squat. And that's exactly right what we all do, to sit into a chair. Think about how many times in a day you're doing that. Now, again, we had a demo. If you were to take that chair away, would you start to go back into a squat the same way without knowing that there's something there? Would that make you fearful? Would that push you forward? So you would be coming out of the alignment that you normally should be when you're going to sit and stand. On top of that, thinking about things to lift up off the floor. How many times have we often done this to pick something up? Right? You don't even think about it. It's like just a reaction to what? Up, floor, pick it up with my back. But have we heard of that statement to not pick things up with our back? What should we be picking things up with?
Our knees.
Legs, correct, legs. So I know it might seem silly to have a piece of paper on the floor and you have to kind of stoop like this down to pick it up, but ultimately it is a lot safer. It protects your back. It's engaging the muscles that should be engaged and keep you protected, even if it's the lightest thing on the floor. Yes, it will ultimately affect your general alignment. We talked about the woman that's doing her lunging movement is considered a single leg movement. So walking, right? Walking is a single leg movement. You're transferring right to left. Subconsciously, we do this so much we're not even thinking about that. Unless we start to slow it down, then we see how much stability goes into just walking alone. And so walking, that single leg movement, whether it's forward, backward, side to side, really focuses on us being stable so that we can avoid injuries, falls, which is important for everybody throughout their life. We got into some upper body movements as well, so anything related to pushing, anything related to back. These are big muscle groups that we just tend to, in general daily activities, not maybe pay so much attention to. Normally when we're pushing something or pulling something, we're doing it with our arms and shoulders. And the arms and shoulders are really facilitators of movements. We should be learning at least how to connect with the muscles that related to push, so they're the main muscle drivers. Because think about this area, especially the shoulders, again, a lot of wear and tear, and they also want to get involved in a lot of things, in compensating for things. So really during a pulling movement, the shoulder needs to stay nice and stable as you engage that movement from your back and pull in. So you should feel it more in your back than the arms and shoulders. But that's a technique that needs to be learned, because it's not something that happens instinctively. And then finally, we had some rotational movement. Rotational movement is like the chopping of your lower body from your upper body that allows us to twist, to turn so that if I need to grab an object over here, I can just twist over rather than moving this way, getting the object, coming back this way. And this is an important plane of motion to keep in our ability to have full range of motion, because how many times have there been cases where somebody might turn and all of a sudden they tweak something in their back, right? It happens very often. So you have to be careful with twisting movements, but there's a great, benefit to it, because that motion itself, when you're careful, helps to release your spine and put space in between your vertebrae, even just as a stretch. But again, something to be careful with. And also just be mindful that you have this ability to move this and that way. So why not make sure that we have all those things accessible to us as part of all of our primary movements. So sorry, I made a little bit longer recap than necessary. But today, and the rest of the discussion today, we're going to move on to strength training and the importance of strength training for anybody at any age, all right? Regardless if you've never done it before in your life and you start at a certain point, it's still going to be incredibly helpful and necessary, honestly, for us to be able to live better lives, stronger lives. So when you think of strength training, what are some of the things that might come into your mind?
Weights.
Weights, yes, like free weights. Mm-hmm. What else?
Bands.
Yeah. Bands. I mean, that's a little advanced, but yes, bands. Yeah, and what kind of images come into your head when you think of it? Do you think of like bodybuilders?
Yeah.
Yes, right? It's almost like instant, like an Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? When you think of strength training, that's kind of the imagery that pops up into your head. And at some point, it was very much, that was a focus in the fitness industry. Showing people who did any sort of weight training, that's what they ended up looking like. Thankfully, we've come a ways from that, and we in the fitness and health industry have realized that the importance of strength training, and this meaning resistance training is anything that you're just adding additional resistance to your body. All right? It does not necessarily mean you have to pick up a weight and use that, because your own body is a way that you can create resistance. And like I say to a lot of people, your body is your own gym. That's the best place to start. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to pay for anything. You can start like that. So movements like a push-up. Now, I'm not even meaning like a push-up on the floor. Even if you can go up against a wall and be able to push back and forth, right then and there, you're practicing a pushing movement, and you're working to strengthen your chest as you do so, as well as your core and other stabilizing muscles. That is a form of strength training. All right, so it doesn't have to mean that you become a certain look or have to use certain equipment to strength train. So let's just go over some of the, this is not an exhaustive list of some of the benefits that people gain from doing strength training. So number one, like I said, in our mission with BoldFit is to have people become stronger for their daily life. So performing strength training will help you then in your life see how much easier, lighter things might feel once you start doing it. It also burns calories more efficiently. And maybe this is just a quick stopping point to consider. If people, when people are concerned about their health, oftentimes, we think, weight. I need to control my weight. And there is, we have, unfortunately, a lot of chronic diseases in this country, diabetes, hypertension, where weight is a factor in somebody's health. However, weight is not the only factor and only indicator of good health. And I'm saying this because oftentimes when we think, great time example for this would be after the holidays, right? Around New Year's time. People are like, I gained some weight during the holidays, maybe I overindulged. There's no judgment on that. It's a wonderful thing to do. But now I feel like it's time, right? That beginning of the year is a good time to start to maybe take off some of that weight. So in the fitness industry, And the diet industry as well capitalizes off of this, and you start to see a flood of people coming into fitness centers and gyms, and they are all going over to the cardio machines. You know, whether it's an elliptical or a treadmill, they're occupying that space because they want to do a cardiovascular activity to get that weight off. That's kind of been the leading misconception of the best way to lose weight or get in shape. Well, the actual story is, yes, people can lose weight, but not everybody's going to be a swimmer, a runner, a cyclist, doing some sort of endurance event. That's just not in the cards for everybody. So what happens then? When people do cardio, they tend to lose a little bit of weight, but then they plateau. And that gets people really frustrated if they're not seeing that linear action of the number coming down, right? It feels very self-defeating if you're just focusing on that. But if you're doing strength training, you have the opposite effect. So when you think about strength training, we are focusing on muscular growth. But remember, your muscles are also, as they're getting stronger, are increasing your bone density, right? They're increasing the strength of your ligaments, your tendons, your muscle tissue, so everything surrounding the muscle and the joint are getting stronger and stronger. That not only helps you to feel and live better, but in the case of an injury or some fall or something that may happen, you have a much better rate of being able to recover from such a thing if you are stronger. And muscle itself, as it grows, you may have heard that muscle weighs more than fat. So it's sort of true. Muscle, when you're building it, it starts to get denser and denser. So it starts to occupy that space in your body and build from there, and getting stronger every time you work it out, break down the tissue, it repairs and comes back stronger. That takes up more space than body fat. So in a sense, it seems like it weighs heavier. It's just more dense. And then when people start training with physical strength training, they might see that scale go up sometimes initially. And they're like, oh no, I don't want, this is the opposite of what I want to do. I want to lose the weight. So what's happening is more not so much as a weight loss, but your body composition is changing, all right? So like your metabolism, very important, right? It's turning our food into energy so we can breathe, have a working digestive system, circulatory system, all those things that we need to live. That's what the strength training is helping to make better, improve, keep it more efficient. And that is where your body composition changes. So you would probably be able to tell better of how you look or feel by trying on clothes. Do your clothes feel a little bit looser than they used to? That's a better indicator of what's happening to your body than stepping on a scale. So that's just kind of my PA of, you know, it's not just about weight, it's not just about a number. There's other things to think about that are even more important. And that goes into our strength training. So, you know, we've kind of already mentioned this is obviously going to improve your heart health, lower your risk of injuries. Sorry, Steph, if you can't see. And improves your cognitive function, right? We're going to get into this a little bit deeper in a moment, but when you are doing strength training, you need to be thinking about what you're doing because this is a mind-body activity. If you do something that's mindless, you're not going to necessarily feel it in the same way. And focusing on what's happening is going to draw more attention to your own body, expanding your knowledge base of your body, how it works, how it operates. So you're more attuned to what's going on every day. And and then again, promoting a better quality of life. I mean, I think that in and of itself is a great selling point for most of us of why it's so important. Okay, so when we're, in addition to strength training, it's not just about picking up the weights and using them. It's also, the offshoots of that include how to improve our stability, right? Stability is so important for all of us, again, because we're trying to avoid injuries, falls, and as we know, when we get older, we start to lose muscle mass, we start to lose some cognitive function, and that stability is going to be very important to help us stay upright and not falling over. So stability in and of itself is a term that means that your body is being protected through a set of motion, and that your joints are able to complete that motion without those forces like gravity trying to pull you down. So again, walking, like I said, that single leg movement is a sign of stability, right? Because I'm able to stay stable even though for just a split second my one foot comes off the floor and then the other meets it. But stability is also important for a number of things. It's going to make sure that we stay safe, efficient. We are making sure that our overall body can withstand stress that gets put on it, external, internal. And the idea of feeling stable is not just a physical thing, but also a mental thing. With the idea of feeling stable on a surface, you have more confidence in your ability to move correctly. So in training, when we are practicing stability drills, I'll often have clients work on some unstable surfaces. There's an exercise piece of equipment called the Bosu ball. And it's like this dome shape with a flat bottom. And that dome shape is something that you step onto and it's wiggly. So it's kind of like almost like you're on a trampoline. And people get on it, and of course, one of the main activities once you first stand up is trying to just find your balance on something that's constantly moving. And while that may seem silly, like why would I want to practice something like that? That's going to make me want to fall even more. Once they start to understand the concept of how to find their stability and not fall over, they step back onto the ground and it's like, oh, this feels amazing, right? This is like, I've never felt so much better on stable ground than from standing on something unstable. I mean, it is like a light bulb moment. All right, so that's why working on something unstable should help to make you feel so much more confident on just walking on the ground. I mean, you don't even need an unstable surface to practice that. You can practice stability from even just shifting, bringing one leg up, balancing. That's practicing stabilization. The other part of being stable is, you know, as we're walking on surfaces, it's exactly that. We're on a surface. But with strength training, we learn to understand the idea of being rooted through the surface, okay? So when you're standing nice and tall, I tell clients the first and foremost is you need a strong base of support. So I want your feet to connect to the floor. And you notice we all pretty much wear shoes all the time, right? So we have now become accustomed to those shoes being a stabilizer for our feet, and our feet don't have very much interaction. So just even feeling the feet, the toes, the balls of your feet, the heels of your feet. Can you feel them in your shoes? And then think about those feet are like your hands on the floor. They are trying to grasp the floor when you're standing or about to perform a movement. And that grasping, that foot connection, it's like you're a tree. You're not just standing on top, you have roots that are going downward, all right? And just that visualization, that concept, will help you to understand how to connect better with the floor and feel more stable. Which, you know, if somebody's performing a squat, when they're coming down this way, your body's moving backwards, it can be a little bit scary that you're gonna fall, but if you have faith in your hips, your glutes, your feet connection, it's like second nature. You feel so much stronger in this position so that not only can you push your own weight up, but maybe eventually use some other pieces of equipment that add additional resistance to that. But it is something that we have to practice, as well as balance, all right? Balance and stability are often used interchangeably, but there's a very subtle difference. So in the other picture we had, she's kind of moving and stopping. That's her, assuming she's moving in a back and forth, side to side movement. where in this position I am holding a tree pose where I'm only balancing on one leg and not moving. So balance is the ability of your joints to be in control when there isn't any movement. All right, so balance and stability go together, but if you're holding a single limb balance, that's balance versus stability where I'm walking. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, please, by the way, feel free to ask questions at any point as they come up. All right, so balance is very important. Again, we know, I don't need to necessarily reiterate the importance of preventing falls. Balance also requires a lot of concentration. So again, not one of those mindless tasks, because as soon as you lift one foot off the floor, your brain and your body is responding, uh-oh, how do I keep you stable from falling over? There's like a synergistic process that's happening throughout our body, and the brain is sending signals of how to do that. And another key aspect when you're balancing, you'd want to look straight ahead, because right, we're concerned about our spinal alignment being a nice form, finding something ahead of you to focus on as you're walking so that you're not this. So if you're starting to do this, your body's going to start to go down. So that cognitive ability to find something ahead of you and focus is really important, to just make sure that you're keeping yourself as stable and balanced as possible. Does anybody in here practice balance exercises? What kind of things do you practice?
I used to do a lot of yoga. Which
Yes,
is a lot of balance.
yes. Barb, did you raise your hand? Yeah.
I did,
Yeah.
and along with
Yes,
yoga.
yeah.
But standing in line at a grocery something,
Yes.
I am always on one leg.
Yes, yeah, right. That standing in the grocery stores, it really, I can do a lot of things there, right? You're just standing there. So yes, exactly. I have like other colleagues or trainers that will say, yeah, standing in my job, and I'm just gonna practice a little bit. All it takes is just a little bit of practice, but it needs to be practice, right? When you first start, no matter who you are, where you are, it's going to try to knock you off, right? Your body's adjusting, you're going to wobble, but the more you're able to feel confident, feel stable, the longer you'll be able to hold yourself up. But this is a lifelong practice. It's not something that should just start later in our lives. It really, these behaviors need to be started as soon as possible. So young adults should be practicing balance, even though they're like, why should I worry about this, right? Yeah. But I try to say, trust me, you're going to be thinking about this down the road, especially since they're starting to have those bad habits and form and alignment much faster than it used to be. So it's important for everybody to make sure that we practice that. And, and most of us in this room, we're conscious about falling. Yes, falls happen, right? You can plan as best as you can to be as stable as possible, but accidents happen. And falls is unfortunately something that's bringing a large number of people into the hospitals. As you can see, the CDC's collected lots of data about this, of how many people are coming in, and then not only just the fall itself, but they have broken bones, they may have traumatic brain injury, and even just the cost of it itself is high, because I don't even mean just the patient care cost involved, but if you're a 55-year-old man, you fall and you hurt your knee and you're not able to work for a bit, that's time and money right there that's going to cost you. So this is a serious issue that, to be mindful about. And that's, again, why these practices, strength training, stability, balance, all help to prevent something like this as much as possible from happening.
Question?
Yes, please.
I had a fall a couple years ago.
Yes.
It cost $10,000 because I fell on my face and I broke a tooth.
Yes.
And after all was said and done. But then what I had started doing, I was not now I'm very conscious of looking down.
Mm-hmm.
And my massage therapist said, you're starting to walk. You're starting to punch over
Yep.
your neck and that sort of thing.
Yes.
So that, the whole thing that, and I was multitasking, I was on the golf course, I was fussing with my glove, I was looking at my scorecard,
Right.
not paying attention, stubbed my toe, boom, and down I went.
Exactly.
So I think as we grow older,
Yes.
the thing that I've noticed, and I hate to admit it, but I used to do a lot of multitasking and can't do that anymore. You've got to, I find myself really having to focus
Yep.
on what I am doing, and especially with walking.
Yes.
You know, to realizing that I'm not supposed to be looking down, but I need to be looking, like you said,
Yep.
straight ahead.
Straight ahead,
Yeah.
yes. And it's almost instinctive. If I have somebody do like a heel-toe walk, everybody all of a sudden starts to look, what are my feet doing? Right? And it's just, again, it's just an instinct that we want to make sure to keep us stable. But reality is, as you're saying, we need to, all of those things are reinforced by making sure that we stay upright. We find something to focus on. But you're right, the multitasking is a huge thing. I would even argue for younger people it's not necessarily the best thing ever, because the mind is in so many different directions that you're really not focusing on the whatever you're trying to accomplish in the moment. And that is something I'm going to talk about too, being mindful. So, yes, Jane, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna, Bill, do we have a microphone there for people to speak? Is the,
No, just speak up.
I'm working on it, but today we don't.
Okay, thank you. I do have something I wanted to say.
Yes, please.
One time I was walking with my mom and she had her, it was winter here in Michigan, she had her hands in her pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And boom.
Mm.
And I've noticed I
Yeah.
have to consciously take my hands out of my pocket so that I.
Yes. Yes.
Don't come like this, because you'll break your wrist.
Right.
No, but it's better than not having your hands to protect you.
Well,
How should we fall? Like that?
bracing yourself. Yes.
And then
Like this?
it's fetal position.
Try to roll.
Do a
Yeah.
shoulder roll, not
Yeah.
a neck roll.
Tuck and roll.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, of course, in the moment, can you really think about doing something like that?
Happens in the twinkling of an eye.
Yes.
Happens in the twinkling of an eye.
Exactly.
Watch football players. They must be
Yes,
trained to
they are.
football
Mhm.
first thing. They're all doing rolls,
Yes. Yes.
right? They're all
Classes on
doing
how to
rolls.
fall.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, there's, I was in a engineering study that taught us how to fall. Watching the professional tennis players, Coco Gauff is young, 20-something, maybe 20. And she fell, they all fall. And the announcer said, did you notice, not only did she drop her racket before she fell, but then
Tucked her
protected,
arms,
yeah.
Yeah.
And so it takes thought and practice.
Yes. Absolutely. It does take that practice. But yes.
I'm gonna
Yes.
write, my autobiography is gonna be called How I Fell This Time.
Oh my gosh.
It'll be a chapter book, and each chapter will be
Yeah.
dedicated to a different time.
I love that. I think that's a great concept. Yes, I'm sorry.
And I would say for any age, we can tell her, there's no valor in multitasking.
Yes.
I mean, what is the big deal about thinking you have to do 3 things at once?
I mean, it's a
Not present for any of them.
exactly. It is a pressure in society. When you're a working professional, you're honored if you're able to do multiple things at the same time, because you're never going to just be working on one. So there's something about that that's like, that's what I need to aspire to be. But what does it really do? Ends up distracting us from things that we're doing at hand, which leads to other consequences.
Especially even if you're a college student, you can't even look up crossing the street.
Oh, right. Oh, my God. We all know this, right? We can experience it right here on campus. Yes. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Lois, I have a chapter for your book
Okay,
that is an unusual way to fall.
okay.
I was walking 2 dogs. They
Oh.
took off after another dog.
Oh, boy.
I had the leash tied around my wrist, so my arms were around me. And they're pulling me, and I fell forward.
Oh, my gosh.
Because my arms were up, my head was up.
Yep.
I landed on my cushy part.
Mm-hmm.
Damage was very minimal. They don't teach you to fall that way, but it's actually not a bad way.
Yes, yes, yes. No, it's true. Yeah, any place where I even had an experience for one of my husband's, maybe it was his 40th birthday. I took him to a lesson, something called parkour. And parkour is like these daredevils that you see who are like jumping across buildings, flipping, like on like streets, doing all kinds of crazy acrobatics. So I thought it'll be fun for the family to try to do something like that. But honestly, the most of that lesson was just kind of getting ourselves to hurdle over a small object and how to fall. The whole time it was like drop and roll, drop and roll. So I realized like, oh, this is not something I would have thought about off the top of my head. And practicing it was actually very valid. I might not ever be able to leap a building, but I know I need to drop and roll if I need to fall down. But there's just, yes. Bill?
The first lesson in jujitsu,
Yes,
fall.
Falling.
Oh, yeah.
right?
I still use it.
And
Last week I did, as a matter of fact.
Gracefully, I might add.
right. I mean, it's a scary thing. Because we automatically assume there's going to be an injury out of that situation, and why wouldn't you?
I bet there's a YouTube on how to fall.
Yes. Oh, yes. How to fall, and also if you're on the ground, how to either get yourself in a better position to call for help, and what's the safest way to be. You don't want to necessarily be flat on your back. If possible, you want to roll yourself into a fetal position and make sure your airway is not blocked. And if you really can't, you stay there. Or if you are by like a chair or piece of furniture, you could also crawl over and try to get up with the help of that chair. So there's definitely things across YouTube, better for worse, information out there that, yes, will show you what to do in either way. So I would encourage people to just take a look at it because it's, right, worth it. And then, again, talking about stability and balance drills, these are just some examples of those. We mentioned yoga as being one that you practice a lot of balance and stability. So like this high lunge would be one typical way that we practice in yoga, how to stay stable in a split stance, because you're going to be much more secure this way than you will be this way, right? And that's just practicing how to hold it, where to feel it, right? All of those things are teaching you how to be better connected with the space around you. The single imbalance is a common one we practice, right? And this is like an age-related normative value of what people in each age group how long they should be able to balance for. Now, they say 18 to 39-year-olds should balance for about 43 seconds. And 70 to 79-year-olds, about 18.3 seconds. I don't know about you, but if I've ever tried to stand on one foot, that 18.3 seconds is a lifetime. Yeah. So that's a lot. I don't know how much faith I would put on the normative value, unless what they're meaning to say is through practice, this is just about where it should fall. Because trying off the bat, trying to hold, in my case, I'd be in the 40 to 49, 40 seconds, that's a long time. So again, I think it's just reinforcing that we need to keep practicing these things. The heel-toe walk. Also these clock toe taps, which are, if you're standing with one leg stable, the other leg is going to start to create the numbers of a clock. And this one is a really good one because now you're also capturing different planes of movement. You're not just worried about what's happening in the front body, but what happens in the side body and the back of the body. So just even that practice and learning how to keep that leg stable. In other words, my knee is not going in or out, my hip's not doing this. So there's structures in place. One thing moving, one thing staying still. Yes?
They had me doing that. Little combs or
yes.
soup cans.
Yes, yes.
And you do it here, and then you have to cross over to do it.
Yes, yes. There's where you cross back.
No, you cross in front.
This way.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. You can set up little things like that. Yeah, like you could have little cones here. I'm sure that just has an elevated surface to have to tap.
When you elevate it off the ground.
It's much harder. Exactly. So these are just some examples, of things that you can practice in your daily activities.
Yeah, I'm going to do that too.
Learn how to do this?
Absolutely. Right, Steph?
Right.
I mean, she's already a gymnastics champion.
Demonstrate
You're going to
for us
clear
right
the
now.
chairs, and I'm going to do exactly that.
Winter's coming.
So, yes, okay. We have a gymnast here. But what I'm trying to get at is that our body awareness, there's this concept called proprioception. It's often thought of as our sixth sense. And proprioception is the idea of understanding, perceiving the location of your body, your limbs, whether you're in motion or not in motion, and the space that you're occupying. All right? So if I were to say to you, hold out your hand with your pointer finger pointed, and then touch your nose with that pointer finger, where would you go instinctively? Right? Because you know that it's there. How do we know that it's there? Right? We're not pointing to our head or ears or shoulders. We all know that in this space, this is where our nose is without having to look into a mirror.
Make you do that.
Yeah.
Yes, that is proprioception right there. This is just a much more advanced concept of proprioception. But the proprioception itself is, again, just your brain having a large part in self-regulating your movements, in coordinating your movements, your posture, your body, all of those things, and the ability to focus and speech, that's all part of having proprioceptive awareness. Now, there are obviously examples of advanced proprioception, and that's why I have the gymnast on the balance beam here, or, Simone Biles is a great example of someone who has very advanced levels. Because think about, they're tumbling, and in the air they're making all these different movements, and I don't know if you've ever tumbled before, but you literally cannot see anything that's going on. You have to, though, from that position, be able to find your landing point to land with your feet and stand nice and upright after you've just been twisting and spinning in the air. How did they do that, right? It starts with very simple things, maybe even just like walking across the balance beam. But they learn over time how to find their landing spot from being up in the air. Or if it's like a ballet dancer when they're doing their pirouettes over and over and over again. Typically, they have something ahead that they stare at, and they're whipping their head around to that exact same spot every single time. So that way, as they're concentrating on that, they're not getting dizzy from all the moving, but they know where to keep coming back at the same time to keep them in that nice pattern of circling and twisting around. Same thing with the gymnast. So, understanding when she's in midair, I need that leg to land here so that I can come nice and upright. Advanced, but just to, kind of further the concept along. Okay, and as describing before, our mind-body connection, right? So our mind-body connection, I'm sure we've all heard the phrase. It's also just a sense of conscious awareness of yourself, right? Your brain is connected to your body. Brain is signaling messages all day long to your body's functions, and your body's responding accordingly. So there's lots of messages being communicated. But sometimes we kind of lose sense of that. And that is why it's important to kind of just, again, this idea of mindfulness, being aware of what's happening. And that mind-body connection is not just, I know where my feet are, but can you feel your feet? Can you feel the muscles in there? Can you feel the muscles in your glutes? Having that actual relationship with it is really what the connection is all about. And for training purposes, we go even more specifically into a mind-muscle connection. So it's not just the idea of, yes, I am mind and present of my body, but I need to also be able to feel the things that I'm moving. You can mindlessly, again, walk through life and not even think about the steps involved, the muscles involved. But if you're starting to really pay attention to your form and technique, then we do need to have a more cognitive approach to what's happening. So that mind-muscle connection, again, is a conscious, deliberate, emphasized muscle contraction that you are thinking about. Even right now, if you start thinking, let's say, about my shoulder blades, visualizing you bringing the shoulder blades together, creating that tension, that technique, in and of itself is a mind-muscle connection without you even having to do anything. You start to recognize where I should feel places in my back when I'm doing a pulling movement, right? We demonstrated this last week. It starts with a spark sometimes. Aha, I feel something back here. And we grow that connection. This is an actual process happening in your body where you're building a pathway between the muscle and the mind that's teaching you how to, next time I go to pull, I'm going to use my latimus dorsi muscle over here. You don't necessarily need to know what it is, but it's going to start to engage that movement, and that way it's taking away from the muscles that are accessories, and you actually feel what's happening. It's that feeling that is really important. And I'm just, again, showing you in a very high level why that's important, because coming back to that, picking the object off the floor, right? So in this position, I'm performing what's called a deadlift. Now, the deadlift just simply means I'm picking up an object that's passive. There's no bounce to it, there's no momentum of it, all right? And in this case, I'm picking up a barbell with a few weights.
How much weight? That looks like compared to you.
400.
How much?
It's about 400.
No way. No.
How many plates are on there?
There are, well, they're all different weights. So there's like a 25, there's a 45, there's a lot of weight. Not 400.
They're all empty. It's all air.
Right, it's just air. So this is, again, performing a movement that we do every day in life, just a little bit more of an extreme version of it. How do I get myself set up to protect myself during this, to lift those weights, right? So again, I'm finding stability on the ground through my legs with the bar in front of me. I'm going to squat down to get my hands, and have to have a nice good grip here, right, to be able to pick something up. But as I start to begin the motion, I'm going to pull the slack out of the bar. So that means I need to set my shoulder blades down neutral, right? We talked about this last week, keeping the neutrality of the shoulders, whether I'm in standing position or leaning over position. My shoulders should not move either way. So I automatically feel tension down my back by squeezing them downwards. And then as I go to pick it up, I'm concentrating on that. And the next part of the movement is to shift my hips and glutes forward so the bar comes up straight. So now I'm focusing again on the back part of my body, my glutes, my hamstrings, my back, to get me into that position to the top. And noticing that I'm also keeping my head and my neck aligned with my spine. Could have done a better job in the second one. But essentially, my head and neck are not doing this or this, but really everything is like a nice straight line. So when you're thinking about any time you're bending over, that's also something to be mindful of. You might not be noticing that you're doing something like this. In the gym, people want to look at themselves in the mirror all the time when they're doing this. I'm like, don't look in the mirror. Just forget it that it's there for a moment. We want to make sure this is more important, to keep our head from becoming that 80-pound head, right?
So in that middle picture, you said you could have done better.
Yes,
by
yes.
putting your head forward a little bit.
Yes, correct. I'm still at not fully upright, so really I needed to have a little bit better angle. So this is why I take pictures and film, because even as a trainer, I need to know if I'm doing it correctly, and I can see, when I was doing this, I wasn't able to keep that position the whole time. So it's a teaching lesson for myself. And it's not something you necessarily feel, but again, very important to make sure I practice that. And all the different muscles I'm feeling on the way down, on the way up, that's a real, it's a whole different world when you start to experience that connection to your muscle. It's a game changer.
Well, even, can I just say that?
Yes, please.
Like just your explanation that says what you were doing was pushing this part of your body forward.
Yes.
I always thought it was you were picking up.
Pulling it up.
With your arms.
Correct. Yes. That's, again, the concept of using your back to pick things up. Yes, because if you look at it, it totally looks like that, right? That I'm like, I have really strong arms and shoulders, and I can just pick up that heavy barbell. No, definitely not. They are, again, just facilitating. I'm literally just holding on with my back, keeping it tight so that the main action is coming. This is called a hinging movement, when you send your hips back and forth. It's kind of like you're bowing. All right, and this movement, and Stephanie, I'm sure you could probably attest to this as well, was one of the hardest movements to learn because it's not a squat, and you're not bending over using your back, but rather you're engaging through your back and hips first. And that's scary because we don't tend to start movements backwards. So just even learning that, it takes some time for a lot of people. Forget about even advancing it to a higher level. But you're right. So once I hold it, everything stays locked in. The rest comes from the bigger muscles in my body to push it up. And that stays that way, hopefully, throughout the whole movement to keep myself safe. But yes, so this is all part of, again, being just mindful. And mindfulness is being all these things, right? The mindful movement is able to be present in the moment, right? Thinking about activities that you'd want to be mindful in. Maybe if you're going for a walk, you are mindful of the things you see, hear, smell, the sounds around you, just being captured in that moment of what's happening and not thinking about the past, it's done, or the future, it's not come yet. So idea of being present. If you're eating a meal with your family members or loved ones, being present in that conversation, enjoying the food that you're actually eating, the textures, the taste, all of those things that we just sometimes just rushing through life forget about doing. And we forget that how much we can get out of that present moment and connecting with people or connecting even with ourselves. Because how many people are, looking at something on their cell phone while they're eating? And I mean, at my dinner table, I can definitely attest to that happens. My kids are all on their phones, my husband's reading something on his phone, and I'm just sitting there like, look at this. Like nobody's connecting to each other. This is not great. I don't like that. We should be here together, be present. So that idea of being present, just like even right now, yes, you have things to do, right? We all do. They're on pause for the moment. Allow yourself to be present, to feel, okay, at least I'm maybe walk away learning something from this. And that anxiety we get, anxiety is really a fear of what's to come. But we don't know for sure what's to come, so why not at least eliminate that as much as possible in that moment and just feel better of what's happening now. And that's going to be where you start to get into stress reduction, you start to find yourself being able to clear your head, better focus, improve mental health. And there's Tai Chi is an example of one thing you can do to help be mindful, yoga, and a lot of different things. And then again, it has obviously great benefits like improving heart health, diabetes, helps to slow cognitive decline. All of those things, especially as we get older, right, we realize how much time flies. To just slow things down and be here for the moment and be present.
Janet, can I just speak to?
Yes.
One of the things Janet knows, I ask a lot of questions, and I just when I say
Yes.
curiosity,
Yes.
and it's being able to combine what we're doing, why we're doing it, helps me to figure out how we're doing it. And for years, I'm not challenging you, Janet. Help me to understand
Yeah.
why this or where this, or she'll tell me we're going to do something,
Yeah.
and she'll do it so I can look at where
Yes.
the movement is, like on her back, for example.
Right.
And so the curiosity, I think, is really helpful in pulling all of this together. And it's not just, we joke around that she may have clients who are like, I don't like this, I'm not doing this. Well, there's plenty of stuff I don't like, but it's like, why are we doing this? How can I do it more efficiently? And then I'm like, well, maybe, there's still things I don't like. But maybe I understand now why we're doing them and how I can do them better so that it's not so dreaded.
I
Yes.
was kind of wondering about non-judgment.
Yes.
What's that about?
Oh, it's a great question. So if you're doing any sort of, let's say you're doing some sort of like meditative practice or even like yoga, When you start, especially, I know more from yoga because I practice it, that the first things that you're normally doing is just settling down. You're starting to take an internal look into your body. So you start to focus on your breathing, you start to clear your head, and then the yogi will say something like, okay, take a look into your body and see what you might be feeling and where without judgment. So it's okay, maybe I feel a little bit more tense in my right shoulder. I'm acknowledging that I'm feeling something there, but I'm not trying to pass a judgment like, oh, I must be doing something wrong, or somebody did something to me. This is a great way to also feel where you might be holding stress. Because if you're sitting here consciously right now, you may not realize how much you're holding in certain spots or in your face, like your jaw, until you start to take that inward scope. And that's why it says just without judgment, acknowledge, and through the practice, you learn how to work on those areas and getting them relaxed and lengthened. But that's actually a great question. So I mentioned breathing, and I'm just going to wrap up in a second here. Breathing, right? What is the one thing we all have to do? Breathe. I mean, again, who's thinking about how to breathe? It's just happening automatically. We're getting oxygen in, we're letting carbon dioxide out. But how often do you ever think about your breathing efficiency, or why it's important to have better breathing efficiency? Because we have a thing that if our body starts to go into some sort of stress period, whether that's stress from work, life, or maybe even stress from, the good kind of stress that comes from exercise, your heart rate's going to change, right? Your heart rate starts to get a little bit more elevated. And when your heart rate starts to get elevated, this is part of that fight and flight response. Our body is very adaptive to protecting us for any survival. So your breathing changes, your muscles you have blood that's flowing to certain parts of your body and shut off from other parts of your body. That's to get you into a place to survive. But it also could be a place where you come into panic. Because again, you're not being able to get all that breath in, the heart rate keeps going up, it can induce a lot of panic. So that's where you probably hear people saying, okay, take in those nice deep breaths. Or maybe even at the doctor, they'll take in the nice deep breath. So what does that mean? So it means that we're not trying to breathe from our chest, which is normally where we are. You see your chest rise and fall. But taking a really deep breath comes from taking in the diaphragm, which is a dome-shaped muscle in our abdominals, responsible for helping us to breathe. So you're actually engaging a muscle each time. So like opera singers, right? When they take in a deep breath or in between music, they're always taught to do it that way. So you're essentially filling your belly with air, like a balloon. The air comes in, it pooches out, and then I exhale, everything comes back down. All the air is released from that balloon. Now, you're probably not going to walk around all day right? But if you're in a period of stress, just anxiety, whatever might be going on in your life, take a moment and take a couple deep breaths. There's a physiological process that happens behind the scenes. You're getting more oxygen to your heart faster and more of it, which will deliver oxygenated blood faster to your body, which will help keep your systems just moving more effectively and efficiently. So that your body will essentially put a nice calming effect on your nervous system, right? And our nervous system is really the key to getting us back into a place where we're not in a fight or flight. And that's not something we want to be in on a chronic basis. It's not healthy for our body. So some ways to practice this technique, again, is just that breathing in the nose, breathing out the nose. Or when you're exercising, you start to learn to do it through your mouth. Breathing in the nose is always the first one, and then out the mouth. And it's scary because people want to breathe out their mouth when their heart rate gets up. Again, inducing that panic. So it's something to practice for sure. And then as soon as you do it, that point in time where you feel like the oxygen hasn't hit your body, keeping your breath going will help to settle you down a lot faster. Another way to practice this would be what's called box breathing. So you breathe in for like 4 seconds, you hold it for like 4 seconds, and then you exhale deeply for 4, hold it, and repeat that process. So it's like a box that you're creating. And that's, again, when you sit there and do that, you're going to feel your body just, and the muscles start to become less tense, and you can actually relax, right? So very important to just make sure that you all are finding some time to relax, all
Can I
right?
just make a little comment?
But of course,
It's just what you're saying, but
yeah,
you know, a singer's breath, actually, they not only, you know, you don't lift your chest.
Yes.
You breathe and the diaphragm comes down, and actually we sing from the ribs. And a good singer, you can actually, they can take a breath and you can feel the back of the ribs open up. So the breath is all here and it's not here.
yes,
And then we have a negative and positive electrical charge in our breath. So that what they now call box breathing, or in yoga,
Yep.
and there's a whole science of it, right? Pranayama,
Right,
I'm sure
right.
you're aware of that.
yep,
But there's something, alternate nostril breathing, where
Yes.
there are exercises.
yep,
It's
Yep.
extremely calming and
Yes.
strengthening. There's
yes,
really-
like nothing else.
Yeah.
You mean, think about spa, I need a spa to calm down. No, you can just do it by sitting there, closing your eyes and taking deep breaths. It's as simple as that, right? Or I hope so, so maybe that's at least something to think about in those times of any sort of high stress situation. And, oops, I will leave you with just the idea of finding joy in movement, all right? Like this whole purpose here, telling you how to strength train and form an alignment, but really it comes down to staying yourself, keeping mobile, finding movements that you enjoy doing. It's not because I'm saying to do this, but something you enjoy. That's so much more important because that's what's going to keep you coming back to that activity, to make it a sustainable activity, to let it become part of your lifestyle. And that's really what we're emphasizing here, that it's as much as you get up every day and brush your teeth, please get up every day and involve some movement in your body. Any movement, all right? And find joy in it. You know, if you don't like it, who's going to want to do it? Now, Stephanie mentioned there are things we may not like doing, but that's why we make it an entertaining and fun process. None of the things we do are punitive or in any way pushing people to the edge when they're not ready. No, not at all. What's the point of that? That wouldn't make it enjoyable. And so for me, it's very important that when people come into our space, we provide positive attitude, support, and again, just keeping people laughing and happy is what makes them enjoy coming back instead of, oh, I gotta go see that trainer again. It's a chore, it's an obligation, you know? That's not how I want to approach it for myself, and I wouldn't want that for others. So please, you know, enjoy, be mindful, breathe, all of those things, and keep yourself moving to stay healthier and safer in your lives.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much.
Very much. Barbara, are you gonna continue doing these kinds of things?
Well, this is for the month of October. We had 5 sessions, but yeah, I think these are great.
Absolutely.
So, good. We'll work on that. Thank you all for coming.
Yeah.
It's great.
And I'm just leaving my contact